felt about 3 years ago that as Christchurch wasn't really reaching people who lived in this part of town, it would be good to try and set something up that was more accessible and nearer. We did a bit of research and we tried to work out what people in town did, where people went. We asked people who didn't go to church why they didn't go to church. We got some interesting feedback. One of the things that we learned was that the timings of various things weren't particularly helpful. So at an early stage, we got in mind that we might do something that wasn't at a traditional church time, and maybe Sunday afternoon would help. We identified Kings Hill as being a key place. This is on a link road into a local community down there where there's 2 or 3 residential housing estates. Many of the children come to this school. It's a church school, and we consequently felt we could publicise what we were about to do by doing take-home leaflets with the children from school, and also by putting leaflets through the doors of the local community, which is not far away from here. We tried to find some people who might be interested in forming a small core team to work in this community, and in particular to talk to people that we knew who lived in this part of town and ask them what they might want to do, where they might want to go. And out of those brainstorming meetings came the idea of running a short, pithy, all-age act of worship on a Sunday afternoon. And a few key families said, yeah, we'll buy into that and we'll come along to start with to make a crowd, in the hope that a crowd will attract a crowd. So we got on with it quite quickly. Perhaps with hindsight, we did too much getting on with it and not enough thinking and talking about what people wanted. When we first started, we had a good crowd of people. 40 or 50 people turned up. We had some newcomers and some guests, and we got quite a buzz, really. We enjoyed working together, and we found that we were developing a style and a way of doing things that people seemed to relate to really well. But after we'd done 2 or 3, we did notice that by and large we were attracting people who were already members of other churches and were simply finding this a different worship preference. And we were attracting people who were going to church somewhere else on a Sunday as well. And we weren't making a huge amount of inroads into people who were unchurched in that sense. We clearly saw that there were some benefits that we gained that we hadn't expected to gain, which was the team of people who were working together were now putting together some really innovative all-age worship, and were getting quite good at that and wanted to carry on improving. So although we had some hints in the attendance figures over the first year that things were dropping off, they weren't dropping off catastrophically, and we had a core group of people who were continuing to come, and 1 or 2 people for whom C08 at Kings Hill was now their spiritual home. And therefore we decided to do 1 more year, keeping a careful stock of who was coming. We had a difficult team meeting where, having decided that we would review year 2 a little earlier than at the end of year 2, and exchanging our happinesses and sadnesses about what had happened, we simply went round the table and asked everybody to answer the question, should we continue or not? And everybody said they agreed that we ought to stop. But when we finished, there was a sense of happiness for what we'd achieved, and it didn't go out with a whimper. We had a good last service and a good last act of worship together, and then the team sat down together and asked how these gifts and skills might be used in other ways. One of the interesting things about asking people if times of worship are convenient for them is that you can't make an immediate jump then to the fact that if you put on an act of worship at a time that's more convenient, they will necessarily come. They're simply telling you that the times of worship are inconvenient, not that they would like to go on some other occasion. I think we might have jumped to that conclusion a little too quickly. I think we might have spent too little time investigating what people do, what people want, building relationships and making friendships with people, and assumed that a different sort of act of worship would have a draw in its own right. And I suspect that we used the act of worship to build community rather than building community to develop into an act of worship. So I suspect that was a mistake. I suspect that we didn't spend long enough as a team sitting down and thinking and praying and talking about what our vision for the project was and how we might see it. So I don't think we took into it a willingness to tweak it and adapt it as we went along. I think when we started in September 2007, we were committed to doing the same thing 12 times. And maybe with hindsight, we should have said every month we might come up with something different if it's not meeting the perceived need. I love trying new things, and consequently I'm quite familiar with trying new things that don't work, and have that sort of motto that failure is a backdoor to success, and you eliminate things from your inquiries. Although we're talking about a fresh expression here in Nailsea that didn't quite take off, there are 4 or 5 things going on, 2 or 3 of which currently have a life and are working well, and I'd love to talk about on some other occasion. So we're in a period of constant experiment. I don't think enough people have a willingness to say this thing should stop, and I think that within the church there are far too many things that go on that should have stopped quite a long time ago. I love starting things, but I love stopping things as well.